Welcome to our connection here to our Mastermind tribe. We are here talking about sacred sexuality, Tantra, and or Tantra, depending on which school you come from, and the Egyptian chakras and how it's all related. So I'm Lisa, Aiylah, Yoga for Love.
I'm Jamie, Takata.
We're here at an internet cafe on a swing teaching you today. So I'm really excited about this fun experience to teach you on a swing. So we have our group of mastermind ladies from our Follow Your Path and Purpose mentorship, one-on-one soul coaching and lifestyle training program on as well. And so I've been sharing a little bit off and on about my trip to Egypt recently, a sacred journey that I took across the world. And there was a lot leading up to it. So I'm going to just kind of go back and start at where I first began to learn about Tantra. I'm not going to do a whole lot of teaching on the Western chakras because it's not really relevant to this type of teaching, because the chakra system is taught in so many different ways. You can take that in our Reiki training, and that's going to take you into a deep dive into the traditional teachings of the chakras, as well as the Vedic teachings from my perspective from the Vedas and the teachings of Sanskrita. But in this teaching, the connection to the chakra system is the connection to the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So the sacred sexuality connection of that divine connection within ourself, within other. And so that's really where I want to start, is my own personal practice. And I'll share with you a little bit about that. But first, I'll just tell you a little bit about me in case you're just new to this channel and you're catching this recording. So I have been working with yoga and as part of the background of my life since I was 19 years old. And it's always been a practice that I've done for my own personal being, just for my own personal well-being. Nothing I ever took in a group or a class or anything like that until I was well into, after having kids and everything, and well into my 30s. So before that, I just practiced yoga on my own. And when I was a new mom, I was very granola. I started learning a lot about different types of things. Vegetarianism became one of my things that I started practicing back in 1998, 97, 96. I was pregnant in 97. And so I had my first child in 98. And then in 2000, I was looking for an alternative form of medicine for my mom, who was very, she had metastatic breast cancer, and she was going through really stringent treatments. And she had a relapse or a recurrence of cancer. And so the cancer itself was metastatic, and the treatments were so harsh and so aggressive that I started really praying about ways to heal my mom. And I knew that the traditional Western treatments were going to kill her, with all the cutting and the radiation and the chemo and just the negative environment in general. And so that's when I found Reiki. And so then I started studying Reiki. I had my second child in 2003, my daughter. And with her, the experience was very different because I had a lot more time under my belt of being vegetarian, doing energy healing. And so she came in when I was really into that practice on another level. And so I raised them as a young mother, and they were about 6 and 10 and a half, 11, when I decided I really wanted to deepen my path. I started working with whole food nutrition with a company called Juice Plus. I'm still with that company 12 years later. I love it. And then on another level, I met a woman who was sharing with me a little bit about the teachings of whole food nutrition. And I decided, okay, I'm going to dive deeper into that practice. So I decided to start a business with that company. It's been extremely sustainable for me. And I still felt like there was more for me to do other than be a mom and, just do a little side job here. So I kept asking, what spirit wanted for me. And my mom had a really great support group throughout her cancer journey. So throughout 2000, when her first recurrence came, and then 2008 was the year that she passed. But in that whole time frame, she had so much support of people. She was super, super positive. She continued to fight and recover and have a good life and a normal life. And we found really great alternative doctors for her, as well as traditional doctors. And I deepened my path within energy healing. And I really was using it for my own personal practice, for my family. And it was not until about 2007 when I was starting to feel dissatisfaction of being a stay-at-home mom. I was feeling a little housebound. I was feeling like I wanted to share my gifts with the world and wasn't sure how Spirit wanted me to show up. And Spirit really reassured me that I've always done yoga. Why don't I look into yoga teacher training? So I ended up going to a yoga teacher training that was available on the weekends. And I did that, and I got my yoga teacher training and finished between 2007, 8, and 9. I started teaching full time, lots and lots of classes that I had at different places, such as karate studios, dance studios, gyms, and I built a pretty large local community where I was in a rural community where there wasn't really any wellness. There wasn't anything non-traditional other than like a regular gym. And so then I opened a yoga studio in 2011. I started teaching teachers how to actually teach yoga in 2012, and wrote my teacher training in partnership with all of my master teachers who are referenced in my Yoga for Love online training programs, utilizing the teachings from Krishnamacharya, the teachings of traditional Vinyasa yoga. But to back up a little bit, in 2010, I got my Reiki master and started really practicing Reiki on others and doing that for people who needed it, who were going through hard times, or really need their energy recalibrated, and so on. And so I really began to offer more services. If y'all could mute as you're jumping on, that'd be great. Thank you. And so when I started my teacher training, it took my yoga studio to another level, where I realized these people that are coming to my training are going to be taking these teachings out into the world. And I had a whole nother perspective on what I was doing. And I realized what I was doing was duplicatable, and it was bringing this awareness further and further out. And as people were graduating my programs, they were going out and doing their own businesses, starting their own places where they're teaching, and then spreading these teachings further and further and further. And so I started to see how this energy was really moving forward. And it was really cool to see that happen. And so I continued to have my teacher training at my studio in person only. And I always had envisioned an online program, and I just didn't know what that looked like, because back in 2011, 12, 13, 14, there wasn't a whole lot of online yoga. And so I just knew that there was a way to reach more people than in my little tiny rural community. And I knew my audience was wider and more global, but I didn't know what that looked like because no one had really done that before, other than people that had like DVDs and stuff like that. But YouTube wasn't even that big back then. And this is only 10 years ago, but still there's been so much happened in the last 10 years. Right. And so I just wasn't sure what that looked like. Of course, now we all know what that looks like. And that's actually how I teach, is, through my global platforms. And I don't have a brick and mortar studio anymore. Thanks to the great goddess Kali Ma, she took our house and burned it, and it went all the way down to the foundation. And I was forced to make a decision. I could either stay keeping up with my yoga studio and going to work every day at the brick and mortar studio, or B, I could support my family and rebuild my home and find a place for them to live as a rental house and continue my online teacher training. And so what I did was I chose B, because that was the most important. And so we come to a crossroads in life when things are really obvious to us. It's like you're going to take the path of the things that are the most important. The things that are least important are going to fall away. So the things that fell away were Zumba and boot camp and various other teachers that came into my belly dancing and other things that are all great platforms, but that's not my purpose. That's not why I am here. That's maybe why some of my teachers are here, and they have other platforms and other places to teach, but that was not supporting my sole purpose. So by stripping me down to the foundation of everything that I needed to happen in my life, that was only the important things, because my sole focus had to be on my structure, my root chakra, my stability, my home, my income. And so my teachers that were still in my training program ended up recording the first beta edition of our program. And the beta edition happened through Google Hangouts, which some of y'all may remember that. And so we recorded our first version of our training program there. And then we've continued to rewrite and upgrade the program, upgrade the software. Now we have a software that's based in our store that you can go through the course at any place that you have internet access all over the world. You can take all kinds of courses now, not just the Yoga for Love online training program, but the Follow Your Path mentorship, the shamanic training, the Reiki trainings, all the business coaching, the cueing and teaching, and all of the different focuses, and plus tons of all kinds of stuff that I offer out there that I put out there for free on my store as well. And so now there's a place to hold all that. And so all that happened because this needed to happen here. And so I thought that, okay, I was going to just be teaching yoga online, and that was going to be my legacy, which it is, because so many of our take program and moving it forward into the world, taking the teachings that they've learned as they graduate the program, going and teaching retreats all over the world, going and teaching classes all over the world. And so I'm seeing how this is moving forward, but yet Spirit wasn't through. And so there's a continuation of the story, which really brings me into the Tantra teachings. I had started learning about Tantra, and a couple of books that I'm going to reference to you today stood out really boldly when I was doing some research. One was at Half Price Books, and one was at my sister's house. And that took me on a path of just personal self-study. So Svatiyaya is one of the branches of the teachings, and as we learn the different levels of teachings of yoga, and it is the self-study path. And so as my own personal practice, I was learning the Tantra path and learning more about chakras and energy. And that was always my field of interest. It was my first field of interest before I formally studied yoga. And before that was dance. And so, but the informal type of dance, I never took formal dance training. So it was something that I'd always done for my own expression. And so by combining all of these things together, this is really where we're at now with the type of training that we're doing today. And it all wrapped up together to make itself into this perfect little package that was great, because all of our trainings were available through the pandemic, because everything was already 5 years in, in, what do you want to call it? Establishment. Yeah, thank you. And everything was ready to go. So we received a whole slew of wonderful new women coming into our programs through 2020, 2021. And so with that being said, then everyone got really sick of being online. And, then I realized that there has to be a level of training that's done through this program that's in person and one-on-one. And so we went back to the basics and developed this Mastermind program. Myself and Jamie Takata here and I have worked to create the platform for this, where it can be not only just yoga teacher training to get a certification, or just Reiki training to get a certification, but it's the deeper level teachings of this work, which is why we're here. And so as I began to realize things were coming together and all of these things were merging into one large program that was all an eclectic version of everything that I've learned throughout my life, this life, past lifetimes, then just started coming in. So that's where we're at, and we're sharing these sacred teachings. We've shared our story, which is available on our Temple of the Sacred Heart YouTube, as well as how we came together in this life. But if you want to share a summary of what your teachings were, and where you came from, and why you're here, and how you got here, just to kind of start this off.
Well, very similarly, I, throughout my childhood, my mom taught women's fitness when I was a child. So we always had a little bit of that going on in the house. My mom liked to do a lot of, activities with us. Like we would tumble together, which is now called acro yoga, but that was not what we called it back then, right? We were just having fun. Um, and then throughout my high school career, I was in the drill team. So I just wanted to dance a lot because I really loved to dance. Because every time there was like a high school party, I was getting down on the dance floor. And so I wanted to know more about dance, and so I got in the drill team. And then every morning, what was the routine? It was yoga every morning. And so for the all 4 years of my high school career, I was doing yoga every day. Again, it wasn't called yoga, but that's essentially what we were doing. We were diving into the body, stretching it out, making it more mobile, moving the body through dance. Um, and as I continued on in my high school career, I also, once everybody got a license, we could drive, then it was like going to events, parties that we could hear the music that we wanted to and dance to that music we wanted to. And really, I got to dive into that, the rave scene back in the 90s. And the focus initially was, it was all about finding a dance floor, going and dancing.
Same.
Dancing the soul.
Same.
Just like,
Yeah.
where can I make it move some more? I was like, the music and the dancing, it's just like I lived for it. It was just the passion. And that's also where I started DJing in 94. Started my diving into the turntables and the vinyl, and getting to physically play with music. That was like a whole other aspect. Music has always been a thing in my life. So like a big thing, like a big deal. So being able to then play music that made people dance was really, I just loved it. I loved watching people dance. Loved throwing down a track that people were just like, yes, and went off to, because I like the way that feels when somebody else does it, right? And so being able to do that really just, I love it. So I continued with that DJ path, and what came along with that was also a lot of various drugs and things. Um, but in my healing process of recovery after some of those drugs that I took, that's where I found yoga in my 20s. Like that's where I found it for myself, because I missed that practice that I had in high school, and I wasn't partying so much, so I wasn't on the dance floor as much. So I needed something I could dive into, and I found a yoga teacher, and I started practicing. And then 2003, I also had my first child. Same year she had her second.
Our girls are only 6 months apart. No, I mean 6 weeks apart.
6 weeks apart. So at that point, I needed something. I was fortunate enough to stay home with her for her first year. Also, I had gone through the whole vegetarian phase and pescatarian, and I was pescatarian the whole time throughout my whole pregnancy, and just eating healthier foods. Although I wasn't the greatest vegetarian, especially pre-child. I was like Taco Bell vegetarian. But
We learn a lot as we go.
we learn as we grow. But yeah, after my daughter was born, I needed something that I could do that, I wanted a job, but a career, a path in which I could take charge of my own schedule and not have somebody else dictate when I had to be where and when I could be with my child. And I had been told many times, that I had just a touch, the that I should go and do massage, that I could, because I could just see it on people's bodies. So I did. I went and took massage classes in the evenings and on weekends, similar to the yoga training, right? And became a massage therapist, started working doing that, and in the process, learned more about my own body. And then, honey spider. And that led me to dive even deeper into learning about the body and how we hold energy in different places in the body. And in about a year into my massage practice, I was kind of having a moment and praying for a guide, praying for a teacher, because I wanted more information and I couldn't find anybody that actually knew anything energy we held there. And 2 days after, an emotional breakdown in my backyard, I had a yoga teacher show up on my massage table and we clicked immediately. And 2 weeks later, she invited me to come work out of her studio. And I gave up my secure job, making not very much money doing my massage, to step out on my own, with her yoga studio being the a pool to pull from to do my work. And in that, I got to also dive into my yoga practice even deeper. And her position, or the way she taught, she did self massage practices prior to, or at the start of her yoga classes. And the way she taught was also going into the body and explaining what we held where. So it was just like, divine intervention, alignment from the universe to bring us together, because she had all the things that I was seeking. But not only did I learn how to help other people from it, but it helped me dive deeper into my own body and heal myself from things that I hadn't even realized were there. I didn't even know how to get in touch with those aspects of myself prior to it.
It's all energy.
But it is all energy, and it woke it up, and I cried a lot for years. I cried a lot. I cried tears of purging things out of my being and diving deep into my soul and becoming more and more confident and breaking old patterns and standing up for myself and getting out of narcissistic relationships and all the things. I had my son in 2007. In 2008, I did my yoga teacher training with her, completed that, started teaching in 2009. This is
the same woman that was on her table.
Yes.
At the very beginning.
Same one who then I moved to Austin in 2011. I stayed there for 2 years, but then I moved back in 2013. I came back to her studio,
which was in Dallas.
And at that point, she had decided it was time for her to move to Hawaii, and she wanted to train me to take over her position and some of her classes and clients doing yoga therapy as well. So I began that process, training for the next 9 months. And the day after she left to go to Hawaii, and the day before I was to start teaching, I received a phone call from the new owner of the studio, that our relationship wasn't going to work. And that's when she told me to come pick up all of my things. So I picked up my things, but when I received that voicemail, I was actually fantasizing about my own space and what I would do with it. And 4 hours after getting that phone call, I actually had my own space, and I opened a week later and opened my own studio and started teaching yoga and bringing on teachers, teaching all the various things: dance, meditation, yoga, belly dancing,
It's really interesting.
ecstatic
Your
dance.
studio opened in 2015 or 14.
14.
Yeah, and that's right when my studio was going virtual, and I closed my studio in 2015. So it
Right,
was just a very
so-
small overlap, but our studios had a very cross-marketed
A
sisterhood
lot of the
tribe.
same people. I had dear friends
But we
that
didn't
were going
meet
to
each
her
other personally
classes.
back then.
Yeah, we knew a lot of the same people. We were sitting in ceremonies
I knew
with
who
same
she
people.
was. We just didn't meet.
And yeah, continued that process of diving deep into running that studio.
Yeah, and then we just began to see each other regularly in festivals and booths, and I was presenting at different festivals, and her booth was usually next to talk, and we decided to collaborate. At
Yeah.
which she was going to DJ one of the huge yoga festivals that I was hosting in downtown Dallas.
And then in 2018, right before that happened, because that started in 2019. But in 2018, I started having these experiences of I had attended this womb healing
Oh, yeah.
class or workshop, and many things were starting to just come into alignment for me on another level. And throughout this, the end of the last like 4 months or so of 2019, I started having these experiences where I was seeing signs and symbols and experiencing that divine union within self. That I was seeing a lot of red and blue symbology, which is like fire and water, but it's also masculine and feminine. I was seeing the Star of David, which is two triangles merged together, which is the union of the masculine and feminine. So it was essentially having a divine union with self experience.
That's right when I was finding some of these books that I'm going to share with you today on this call.
Yeah, so that all kind of led to diving deeper into self and recognition of that union within self. I was coming to a place of a more devout self-love and balance within of my feminine and masculine aspects. And then 2019, that's when I wanted to be DJing more, and she needed a DJ. We were like, what? Wait, what? And then ended up doing that. And that's kind of what brought us together in short form.
Right. That's when we first started physically working together. So do you want to pause there?
Let's pause there and go from that.
So that was the backstory on like how we came to these kind of teachings. And so at that time I was hosting a large yoga festival, like I mentioned, and she was DJing. And so I was also in my own personal practice of working with deep dive into the chakras. I had just written my Yoga for Love Tools book, which has a whole bunch of teachings on the traditional Western chakras, but I felt like there was more, and I continued to dive deeper. So I'm going to just move this, because this was our book platform actually. Can you get this bottom one out? Okay, there we go. So the first book that came to me, or I don't even know which one came first, but this is the one that I'm going to be teaching on.
This one came first.
No, this one I had before. I was studying
Oh,
this a couple
okay.
years ago before I actually pulled it out when I sat with ayahuasca in 2020. So this one I found at Half Price Books. And it was the original copy a friend of ours has who's currently traveling in her van through Mexico. But so she mailed me a second copy, which is significant to know, and I'll tell you why later. But this is the power of Shakti, the 18 pathways to ignite the energy of the divine woman by Padma Prakasha. And so this Padma Prakasha, he is a teacher, a child prodigy, and he teaches in the Vedas, several different Tibetan languages, and he's led pilgrimages all over the world. And I didn't know who he was. The book actually just popped off the shelf to me, literally with my. It didn't even have a spine, so it was literally blank. And I was like, "What's that book?" And I pulled it out. I'm like, "Oh, Shakti. Okay, yeah, I'm going to learn more about Shakti." So I just bought the book. And then right about that same time, my sister had this book, The Ancient Teachings of the Flower of Life, Volume 2. There's a first volume as well. As back from Egypt, and I actually got to see the flower of life carved into some of the oldest temple walls in the world. And so to have these things come together when I didn't know what was in these books, obviously they were just sent to me. And so when the power of Shakti came to me, it was somewhere around probably 2018, 2019. And I just started kind of reading it casually because it has a lot of things in there like meditations, breath work. It has a lot of backstory on the energy of the woman, the meaning of Shakti, what Shakti is, because Shakti is the divine power that comes from our source. There's a train right here if you can't tell. So as Purusha, which is our great energy that we are connected to.
Gonna get
Just
pause.
So just as we begin talking about Shakti, then you have this beautiful train energy, right? Because that is how Shakti works. Shakti works like the train energy is just gonna go. You got to get on the fucking train. If you don't get on the train, it's just gonna go anyway. And so I have always said that, like, this train is moving. You're gonna either get on or you're not. And so this train is not stopping because someone can't keep up. She can keep up with me, but there's not a lot of people who can, and especially in that way with the sacred sexuality. And so I was looking to learn about my own self and my own being and how to connect to that Shakti energy, which is the divine masculine feminine connection, which is the Shakti energy and the energy of sexual creation. The energy that is the strongest, deepest, most integral life force on the planet. And it's what charges up the Merkaba of our own being, which is like she mentioned, the Star of David, the upward facing triangle and the downward facing triangle. Those combinations of energy and all those points within our being is our own light body. And the Shakti energy, as it separates from source or is perceived as separation, then Prakriti is the separation from source. Purusha is the overall great spirit source, the oneness where you're completely in bliss. And as it separates, Shakti is the one who makes the energy move. She is the force that makes everything into being. Shakti is the primal life force that is the force of creation, period. Anything that's manifest in this world is created through Shakti. So, of course, orgasmic bliss is the quickest way to achieve that, which, unless you study this, you don't know this. You think you have to work hard for 60 hours a week for a corporate job and, work until you're 70 and try to work for a pension and a retirement to pay your bills. That's not how this world works. That is a story, and it is an old story. And it's a story that's absolutely not relevant anymore. Because when you have the key to life, which is the secret ancient flower of life, the teachings of the flower of life itself, the key of life, then we connect to that life force energy and everything unfolds for us. We begin to quantumly manifest everything that is in our vision because it's already here. And so as these teachings began to come in, I didn't know any of this from my own personal experience. I had heard some of these things were, like the law of attraction and things like that. And I'd read lots of law of attraction books and studied The Secret. And it's even, required reading in my training courses, the 4 agreements, some of these very traditional teachings. But until it was placed in our pathway for us to really experience it and experience that manifestation and that unfolding, it's hard to understand how real it is and how accessible it is. The experience through Shakti is also manifest through birth. And so this is all through the sacred chamber of the womb. And in Egypt, the guardian of the womb is the Sphinx. The Sphinx is the guardian of the womb of the world. And so those teachings began to unlock for me as I began to just say yes to this pathway. I didn't know what I was saying yes to. I didn't know what I was signing up to. We can't tell what that looks like.
No,
but
well, yeah. So in 2018, when I did go to this room, right, we did a little guided meditation, and the idea was to come to a door, and this door was actually the entrance to the womb, and then you were to go through the door and then describe what you saw in the womb. My experience was I was standing outside of a golden pyramid, and when I walked into the pyramid, there were hieroglyphs all over the inside of the walls with a holy grail sitting in the center of the pyramid on a pedestal. And then I had a vision of a scarab beetle come in front of me and then disappear into like stardust. And then I saw a vision of a male lion and a female lion facing each other on the side, like on each side of the grail. And then afterwards, I had a vision of a falcon come to me, and this whole, which is like the divine masculine and divine feminine. The holy grail is like the womb as well. So it's just all this symbology, significance that it inspired me to actually create a quick image on some
we'll share that with our Telegram.
Yeah, because I had to like get it out of my head what I saw. I had to, make a little, like on my phone on Photoshop.
It's super accurate though, which is so crazy. It's so accurate.
Little did I know what the information I was receiving really was, like I understood it to a certain level, but now it means so much more than what I could have ever anticipated.
Because those symbols were symbols at the time, but now we understand what they really mean. And so that's what happens when you start following and listening to spirit. Is like you're just gonna just do it, and you're like, I don't really know what this means. I'm just gonna follow this. And so I just got to like maybe chapter 4, and then I literally put this book down for several years. And then I picked it up again when I sat with ayahuasca over the pandemic, over my late mother's birthday. And then I put it down again. And I wasn't told to pick it up again until the moment where I had a trigger with her in a memory in January of 2021, which was literally a year ago. And so we want to share with you the teachings from here, but we're going to be mindful of our time and keep these trainings to a little bit shorter. So what I would like to do is to wrap up with just letting you know that we're going to go deeper into each of these books. And we have several other books for us to read through this training. But if you want to get the book, it's 18 Pathways of the Divine Energy and the Power of Shakti. And then one we have on PDF for those of you that are in our course, and PDF Drive has it for free, but it's also available. It's a really great teaching because I have a lot of great artwork and stuff in it. The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, Volume 2, by Melchizedek. And so those are the two that we're going to start with for this portion of the course. We want to wrap it up today to let you know that these teachings are going to get super juicy. They are, there's a lot of really deep dive work. A lot of it has to do with birth, motherhood, womb healing, masculine, feminine connection. No matter what body you're in, we all have those qualities. And so I want to share with you, because this is sacred, important information, and so much has come together since I came back from Egypt, continue to receive more and more downloads, specifically from this book. And I want to share with you on the next call. So we're going to leave off with that. We're going to jump off onto the next call, starting up with the teachings that came directly from the Power of Shakti book. Anything you want to say to wrap up today?
Just if you're not familiar with that, some of the divine feminine, divine masculine energies, as far as like the duality, just go do like a quick image search on Google for divine union or divine masculine.
We're going to go refer you for deeper teachings to our Telegram channel, which is Inner Goddess Retreats, Temple Sacred Heart, because I don't want you to I don't want people going into a scroll hole into the internet and just pulling up random shit. And so we'll drop it in our Telegram. I've got to go because my battery's going to die. We've got to end this call. And so I love y'all so much. We're going to see you on the next chat, and we'll see you on the Telegram, and we'll talk to you.